Okay, folks, I'm going to call the meeting to order. As required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a decision on the applications before us today. And to start things off, I will introduce the Committee of Adjustment. I'm Mr. Robertson. We've got Councillor Yeo. We've got Mr. Strangway, Ms. Richardson, Ms. Archer, Mr. Erickson, and Ms. Skyer. All right, got everyone there. And staff, we've got, let's see, Catherine Evans, Planner 2. We've got Megan Peck, Planner 2. Mr. Lahi, Secretary Treasurer. Our Recording Secretary, Ms. Crawford. And staff remotely, we have Mr. McKinnon. I believe he's with the Building Division. All righty. And I am told that our Manager of Planning, Ms. Berry, will be here in the not too distant future. So, good stuff. All right. Are there any comments or questions with respect to the agenda as printed? Being none, can I get a motion on the floor? Ms. Skyer, Ms. Archer. If there's no further comments or questions, all those in favor? And that carries. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? All right, being none. The minutes from the last meeting. Any comments or questions with respect to those minutes? Being none, a motion. Mr. Strangway, seconded by Ms. Richardson. Being no further comments or questions, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Berry. All right. For the benefit of everyone here, and if there are folks online, the committee will hear comments, gather information, and may ask questions to clarify statements made. The committee may ask and answer questions or redirect questions to the appropriate person. Please note that any information or comments given to the committee during this meeting, they are considered evidence. We will first hear from staff, then the applicant or his or her agent. We'll then hear from any person in support of or from those who have questions, concerns, or are opposed to the application. Finally, the applicant or his or her agent will have an opportunity to respond to any of the statements made to the committee. Having said all that, we move to file number D20-2023-042. And this is Ms. Evans. And Ms. Evans, you wish to speak to this matter with respect to the notification or the advertisement? Please do.
Thank you. Yes, before we move into the evaluation of this application, it came to my attention at the beginning of this week that part of our requirements under the Planning Act for circulating notice were not met to the letter. So I wanted to provide further information on this and provide committee the opportunity to decide whether the application should proceed at today's meeting or whether we should defer the application in order for the notice matter to be addressed and have the application come back to a subsequent meeting. So for Section 45 applications, the Planning Act contains options for approaches to circulating the public. We can elect to publish notices in the newspaper, or we can circulate notice to property owners within 60 meters of the subject property through the mail, as well as post a notice on site. It came to my attention that the sign on site was not posted in accordance with the Planning Act regulations, being that it is to be posted at least 10 days before the meeting. It was posted at the subject property at the beginning of this week. Our process in planning is to prepare and laminate the sign and then notify the owner applicant via email that the sign is ready to be picked up, which we did in this case. Also, notice was circulated to surrounding property owners via mail, and I did receive 2 phone calls with questions, not concerns, just questions from surrounding property owners. So I am satisfied that notice was received via mail. Planning also goes above and beyond the requirements of the Act as we do post notices online. So information about applications is available online before the meeting. We have not received any comments of concern as a result of the mail circulation, the online posting, or after the sign was posted this week. In my opinion, I feel that the requirements for notice have been satisfied, and I would feel comfortable proceeding with this application today. But with that, otherwise, I will turn this matter over to the committee.
Thank you for that, and well said. And committee, I guess you've heard what the planner had to say. Are there any questions of the planner? Ms. Archer, go ahead.
Just one, please, through you. Were the two, not the concerns, the questions you received, were they from adjacent neighbors or were like the next door neighbors?
Through the chair, one was the property owner to the south. It was a question regarding a shared fence and whether any changes would go on with the fence. The second was not from an abutting property owner, just in the neighborhood.
Anything further, planner? Then I'd like a show of hands. Are you content to proceed with this, given what the planner has said? All right, looks like we are. And just before I ask you to proceed, Ms. Evans, I'm up here showing my age today, but I should advise to those folks down there that if someone wishes to speak, be it the applicant, please approach, if anyone here, raise your hand and I will acknowledge you and you can come up to the podium. There's a speak button on the mic there and you'll see a red light come on. We will afford you 10 minutes to speak. No one ever takes that long, but we do afford you that amount of time. If you can't possibly get it all in within that 10 minutes, then I'll ask the committee if they would afford you a couple of more minutes. We've never had that happen. As I say, most people are finished. When you are finished speaking, please remain at the podium and I'll ask the committee if they have any questions of you. And if they don't, then you may be seated. And with those online, if there are any, the same thing applies. When you come on the screen, please give us your name and then we'll proceed from there. Having said all that, go ahead, Ms. Evans.
Thank you. The subject property is designated residential under the Town of Lindsay official plan and is zoned Residential 3 Holding 4 zone under the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw. In order for development to proceed, the H holding provision will need to be removed by council bylaw following submission of an application by the owner and the subsequent planning process. The subject property is located in an established residential neighborhood located east of downtown Lindsay and south of the Scugog River, separated from the river by residential properties as well as Old Mill Park. The property contains a 1.5-story single detached dwelling with a basement, which was constructed in 1947, and a shed. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of a 2-story addition with a basement onto the back of the existing dwelling, as well as the construction of a 2nd story onto the 1.5-story existing dwelling. Section 8.2C of the bylaw requires a front yard setback of 7.5 meters. The existing setback is 2.13 meters. Section 8.2F of the bylaw requires a rear yard setback of 7.5 meters. The proposed setback is 3.35 meters. Please note that an amendment to the third relief is required, as it should read that Section 8.2H of the bylaw permits a maximum gross floor area as a percentage of lot area of 40%, not as a percentage of lot coverage. So again, first page of the report, relief number 3 should read, Section 8.2H of the bylaw permits a maximum gross floor area as a percentage of lot area of 40%. The proposed gross floor area is 89% of the lot area. This amendment is also required to the text box that's on the sketch in Appendix C, but the correct wording can be seen here on the slide. The proposal is to construct an addition onto the back of the existing dwelling. This addition is to be 2 stories with a basement for a total of 3 levels. Here we can see the floor plans for the 1st and 2nd stories of the proposed addition. And here we can see the floor plan for the basement of the proposed addition. The proposal is also to convert the existing partial second story into a full story, making the entire dwelling 2 stories with a basement for a total of 3 levels. And this proposal will add additional living space, a bathroom, and 3 bedrooms. As the Lindsay secondary plan portion of the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan is under appeal, the Town of Lindsay official plan applies, and within the residential designation, residential uses, as well as buildings and structures accessory to residential uses, are permitted with performance and siting criteria being implemented through the zoning bylaw. The photo on the left shows the existing dwelling and was taken from the road, and the photo on the right was taken from Google Street View and shows the distance between the dwelling and the road. The intent of the minimum front yard setback is to ensure adequate spatial separation between built form and the traveled portion of the street, to create a streetscape that is in keeping with the residential character of an area, and to maintain features such as sightlines. The proposal is to convert the half-story to a full story, which complies with the maximum height within the R3 zone, and that is not anticipated to alter sightlines. Additionally, there is adequate spatial separation between the dwelling and the traveled portion of the road. The front lawn continues past the front lot line of the subject property, extending to the edge of the road, the distance between the dwelling and the edge of the road being approximately 6 meters. No further encroachment than what exists already today is proposed. Additionally, as illustrated by this image, with the subject property identified with the green star on the left there, the existing front yard setback is similar to that of other dwellings in the area, so this setback is in keeping with the character of the area. These photos show the existing rear yard, including the sunroom, which is to be demolished. The intent of the rear yard setback is to reduce land use and privacy conflicts between abutting properties, address massing impacts, and provide sufficient rear yard amenity space. The property to the south and the subject property are separated by a solid privacy fence, blocking the view between rear yards. The proposed addition will be approximately half the width of the existing dwelling, limiting massing impacts as only a portion of the dwelling is to be extended towards the rear lot line. Also, the configuration and width of the proposed addition will leave approximately half of the existing rear yard as amenity space, in addition to the 3.35 meters between the proposed addition and the rear lot line. As per section 8.2H of the bylaw, the maximum gross floor area as a percentage of lot area shall be no greater than 40%. The proposed gross floor area is 89% of the lot area, and this includes the 2 stories and the basement. The purpose of this provision is to manage density and to maintain balance between the size of built form and the size of a lot. Gross floor area is the total area of each floor of a dwelling, and under the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw, a finished basement is included in the calculation of gross floor area. From the street, whether a basement is finished or unfinished is generally not perceptible, and the presence of a finished basement does not add to the perceived mass of a building when viewed from the outside. For comparative purposes, if the basement at the subject property was unfinished and therefore removed from this calculation, the gross floor area as a percentage of lot area would be reduced to 59%. Under the R3 zone, the maximum lot coverage and maximum gross floor area as a percent of lot area are the same, being 40%. And I've put together this graphic to try and demonstrate a series of dwellings that could comply with both provisions. So if a proposal was to build to the maximum 40% lot coverage, the built form that could also comply with maximum gross floor area would be a one-story dwelling with no finished basement, as seen in the top left corner. Otherwise, as the number of levels increases, the lot coverage would have to decrease below what is permitted by the bylaw in order to stay within the permitted maximum gross floor area. Therefore, the footprint of the dwelling must decrease in order for additional stories or finished basements to comply with the maximum gross floor area as a percentage of lot area. If a two-story dwelling was proposed, or a one-story dwelling with a finished basement, the lot coverage would have to be reduced to 20% in order for the dwelling to comply with the maximum gross floor area. If a two-story dwelling with a finished basement was proposed for a total of 3 levels, the lot coverage would have to be reduced to just over 13% to comply with the maximum gross floor area as a percentage of lot area. This slide shows what is being proposed at 43 Kent Street East, being a two-story dwelling with a finished basement. The existing gross floor area of the dwelling is 78.87 square meters, and the proposed ground floor area is 114.54 square meters. The proposal complies with the maximum height and maximum lot coverage provision for the R3 zone. It also complies with the minimum interior side yard setbacks. As the existing dwelling is currently a half-story on the top level, the gross floor area will not change through the conversion of the half-story to a full story. The increase in gross floor area will be through the construction of the addition at the rear of the dwelling, so this additional built form would not be as visible when viewing the property from the street. There are existing two-story dwellings in the area, so the proposal will not be out of character. For comparative purposes, in other zoning bylaws and in other residential zone categories under the Lindsay zoning bylaw, the density and mass of the built form of a single detached dwelling is managed through provisions for maximum height and maximum lot coverage, not maximum gross floor area as a percentage of lot area. Overall, it is not anticipated that a two-story dwelling with a finished basement that complies with the maximum height and maximum lot coverage provisions will negatively impact neighboring properties or the character of the area. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way. After the writing of the report, comments were received from Kawartha Region Conservation Authority stating they have no concerns with the proposal and that a permit will not be required from their office. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments of concern were raised by members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. And I suppose now we should have a test case for the committee. Given what you've heard there, if we had a house that was this big, what would the gross floor area be if you did a... No? All right, we'll bother with it then. All right. Are there any questions of the planner? Yeah, Mr. Erskine, go ahead.
Through the chair, what is the parking requirement as it exists and with the addition?
Through the chair, I'll just take a moment to check the Lindsay zoning bylaw for parking.
If I may, while she's looking, I was there on the weekend, and I'm sure the councilor would take great pride in all the activity that was going there. The place was packed with cars on all the side streets, a wedding across the street, something going on, a big performance at the theater, people fishing, people using the park. So it's a very popular area.
Thank you for that.
Through the chair, for a single detached dwelling, the parking requirement is 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, and this will be 1 dwelling unit. So it's still going to be a single detached dwelling, not a semi or a duplex.
Follow up? Are there any further questions from the committee? All right, being none. Is the applicant here? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? Is the applicant online? Do they wish to speak to it? All right. Is there anyone online or here wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone online or here wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we? Ms. Richardson.
As recommended by staff.
I'm sorry?
Recommended.
Okay, all right. Do I have a seconder? Ms. Archer? Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right, moving right along. We're dealing now with file number D20-2023-043, and this is 1639 Kirkfield Road, Geographic Township of Eldon. Ms. Peck, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is located south of the Kirkfield Hamlet area and west of Kirkfield Road. The property is approximately 44 hectares in size and abuts residential and institutional uses to the north and east. The purpose of the application is to fulfill a condition of approval pertaining to consent application DO3-2022-013 to permit a reduced lot frontage on the retained lands. Based on the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, the benefiting lands being 1653 Kirkfield Road contain a single detached dwelling and a detached garage. On the second page of the report, under the official plan review, I mentioned that the retained lands are vacant. This section should be amended as the retained lands currently contain a single detached dwelling, a barn, and an attached garage. The consent application sought to sever approximately 8.7 hectares of land to be consolidated with the abutting residential lot, being 1653 Kirkfield Road. As a result of the severance, in this case a lot line adjustment, the retained parcel will have frontage on 2 municipally improved streets. This includes 7.62 meters of frontage on Orchard Street and 152.15 meters of frontage on Kirkfield Road, for a total frontage of approximately 160 meters. The subject property is designated Development Plan Area 9, Rural and Hamlet designations under the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan. These designations permit the retained and benefiting lots' existing uses. The proposed severance upholds the goals and objectives of the city's official plan, and therefore the application maintains the general intent and purpose of this plan. Here's a photo of the farmland that is located adjacent to the retained lands. Oh, sorry. This is the photo of the farmlands here. My apologies. This next image illustrates the current condition of the frontage off of Orchard Street. And this last image shows the existing dwelling on the retained lands. The subject property is zoned agricultural zone under the Township of Eldon zoning bylaw. The proposal complies with the provisions of this zone with the exception of the minimum lot frontage. Section 7.2.1.2 of the bylaw requires 230 meters of frontage for properties zoned A1. Due to the severance, the retained parcel will have approximately 160 meters of total frontage on an assumed public street. The intent of this zone provision is to ensure lots are large enough to accommodate development and to adequately provide amenity space, private services when required, and stormwater infiltration. While the retained lands do not comply with the minimum lot frontage, the proposal meets the minimum lot area under the A1 zone. Therefore, the lot size may adequately accommodate potential development, amenity space, and space for water infiltration. The minimum lot frontage requirement also ensures the property can accommodate a building envelope with the appropriate width of a lot while still complying with the minimum side yard setbacks. The retained lot is wide enough for future development that can easily comply with these yard requirements under the A1 zone, including the installation of an unencumbered private sewage system. Therefore, the proposal maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The retained lands will maintain access opportunity from 2 improved public streets located here and here. Therefore, opportunities for lot access will exist, and the reduced lot frontage does not inhibit future development of the land. Furthermore, the reduced frontage is in keeping with the existing lot fabric, which includes other agriculturally zoned properties with undersized lot frontages, such as properties municipally addressed as 970 Portage Road and 954 Portage Road, which are both outlined in orange above. Therefore, the application is considered desirable and appropriate for the development or use of the land, building, and structure. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-ways with respect to access, drainage, streetscaping, and maintenance, and therefore the variance is considered minor in nature. No additional comments, concerns, or objectives were raised by members of the public or circulated agencies. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance, and staff respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peck. Other questions of the planner? All right, being none. Mr. Carroll, I see you sitting there. Do you wish to speak to the application?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The recommendation at item 1 under relief sought, using the measurements referred to you by staff, if you approve 160 meters, the application property does not comply with the 160 meters. You cannot round up. You can round down, but you cannot round up. If you approve a minor variance that says the frontage is acceptable, authorized at 160 meters, we already know to 2 decimal places, it's 159.77. So if you would agree to change 160 to 159, that addresses that concern. The second one, Mr. Chairman, deals with condition 1. My client cannot fulfill condition 1, and my client cannot fulfill condition 2.
Do you wish to speak further to it?
No, sir. I'll wait for an explanation. Thank you.
Ms. Peck, would you like to respond to the concerns raised by Mr. Carroll?
Through the chair, the lot frontage, the total lot frontage at 160 meters is approximate, as we did not receive a survey, so it will remain approximate. In terms of the wording of the conditions, the planning staff believe that this is stylistic, and that condition 1 is intended to point to the existing frontage identified on the sketch in which the condition would be met. And condition number 2 is intended to facilitate the consent's timeline. After the minor variance appeal period would end, the owner would have satisfied condition 1, a provisional consent. And once the remaining 10 conditions of provisional consent are met, the consent can be finalized up to April 21st, 2025.
Mr. Carroll, do you wish to respond to anything the planner has said?
I don't think this is the forum for that discussion, sir. I provided these concerns to your staff earlier. I received no phone call. I received no email back. It is clear that you have the authority to approve a reduction, and there's no argument from my client or from the neighborhood or from your staff that whatever is going to be left is appropriate. But you cannot authorize an approximate number in a bylaw. It has to be a specific number. That's general planning law. The first condition, I think I understand what they're trying to say here, but there is nothing that my client can do to fulfill that condition, and there is nothing my client can do in condition 2 to fulfill it. If they want to tie it to the granting and the final perfecting of the companion consent application.
Just let me interrupt you for a minute, Mr. Carroll. Ms. Berry, I'm going to ask you perhaps to respond to some of the comments that have been made by Mr. Carroll. So go ahead, Mr. Carroll. I don't believe you were finished, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to prepare Ms. Berry for any questions. Go ahead.
Committee, if condition 2 was expanded to include what staff informed you, then it would be easy for my client to understand it and to achieve it. But the way it is written right now, I don't know who's to do what that will result in condition 2 being fulfilled. And condition 1, whether it's stylistic or not, has nothing to do with it. The authorization of this minor variance shall proceed generally in accordance with a sketch. The authorization of the variance is simply to authorize a reduction in the required frontage from A to A minus. It can be an approximate number, but it has to be a definitive number that is hopefully less than the frontage that we've agreed on. And we've agreed on 159.77. I'm just looking for clarity, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess the question I would have to you, Ms. Berry, as a manager, you've heard Mr. Carroll state that, in fact, it should read 159.77, and yet we're using what he says is an approximated number of 160. How do we proceed? Or can we?
Sure, Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity, and we certainly appreciate Mr. Carroll's professional opinion and respect that. The sketch that is indicated through the appendix as the condition and what would form part of the committee's decision does indicate the 159 figure. That is what the committee would be approving. It's not an approximation. That figure was 160 used in the notice. There wasn't a chance that we would have received a survey and been able to more precisely, accurately indicate the number of 159 with the decimal places if we had that as a comparator, but for the purposes of the decision, it would speak to what is on the sketch, and that is the 159 figure. The conditions we feel are finalizing the committee's decision. They, for all intents and purposes, and in their most basic sense, in our opinion, are already met. We do apologize for not responding to Mr. Carroll's communication in a more timely manner. We felt after reviewing the comments that there wasn't a need to change what, again, in our opinion, is just a basic report format, is stylistic in nature, and does not change or impact the decision, which takes on a format of its own. Those are my comments.
Thank you for that. Mr. Carroll, did you have any questions of the manager?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To the committee, yes. Question to the applicant or to the planner or the manager? All right, to the planner, yes, go ahead.
I believe so. We're dealing with 160 meters, and I'm looking at the sketch, and 132 and 7 only are 140. Are they not? Meters?
Ms. Peck?
Through the chair, if you just give me one moment to take a look here. Through the chair. So in the text of the report, it does mention that we have 7.62 meters of frontage on Orchard Street and then 152.15 meters of frontage on Kirkfield Road. So in this case, I would amend Appendix C to include that 152.15 meters of frontage on Kirkfield Road, which would equate to 159.77 meters of frontage.
So Appendix C is in error then. So if we're going to, we should, as Appendix C is amended, I guess, if we finalize this. Is that correct?
some discussions there, so hang on a second. As I've indicated previously, I have absolutely no problem with these discussions with the planners because we're here to make informed decisions. So,
Thank you for that time. So the sketch will be amended to reflect the numbers that are in the report, which were used as the evaluation, as well as in the circulation, the number is 159.77, so it was circulated accurately as well.
a motion, then it will reflect the 1.5977.77?
That's correct.
All right. Yes, Ms. Archer, go.
So we know for a fact that it's even penciled in there that it's 132.8. So someone has actually written that wrong. Like we do know that it's this number that's wrong and not the number in the sketch or in the report that's wrong.
Ms. Peck?
Through the chair, that's the number that I'm mentioning that's in the text is the correct number. So it is the 159.77. This is not a survey here, so this should just be for reference purposes. This number here, the 132.8, is the number that is incorrect. It should read 152.15.
We have something that shows that, like, where did the 159 come from? Did you actually go out and measure it? Like, because it looks like the applicant provided that sketch, so one would have thought they would have given the bigger number if that's what they're looking for, relief.
The overlay on this sketch was provided for display purposes for this presentation. So that was in my error. This was not provided by the applicant. This is an overlay that I have prepared, that red box.
Understand that, but in the writing inside the retained parcel, it's written by pencil, 132.8. So that, did you put that there as well? Or did you just copy what they gave you?
That is the original sketch from the applicant. That is I don't know who wrote that, as I'm not sure of where this sketch came from. But again, it's not a survey, and the applicant is looking for a lot frontage of 152.15 meters on Kirkfield Road.
Okay.
Ms. Archer, just before you go further, I've seen our planner is there, his hand up, Mr. Carroll. So did you wish to respond to that number that Ms. Archer is querying?
Yes, thank you. My client gave me the measurements her and her son were out there measuring. The measurements they gave me, I put on the sketch, and I provided the sketch to the planning division. There's been no mistake made by the staff in that number. On that sketch, yes. The matter can be resolved, Mr. Chairman, if we generally agree that 159 is the number that is there. If you want to put it to 2 decimal places, I think that's overkill. But if you change in the recommendation 160 to 159, And if condition 1 is revised to something along the lines as follows, that this approval applies to the reduced lot frontage of the subject land as granted in decision D03-2022-013, the matter's resolved, in my
All
opinion.
right, just a minute. Throwing numbers around here fairly loosely, so I want to, just a minute if you would. Yeah, go ahead.
But it appears to me that further north, there's another 20-meter frontage. So you see that little cutout, which is probably not included in the 132, so that would,
All right. I'm going to go back to Ms. Peck. Did you hear what Mr. Carroll had to say with respect to condition 1?
Through the chair, yes. So I am comfortable setting the total frontage at 159.77 meters. In terms of addressing the member's question about that green retained frontage, that little piece, I'll point to it here, right here, that is not counting towards the total lot frontage because that is an unapproved road allowance. It's not like Pine Street, it's not on a municipally improved road, so it doesn't meet the definition of lot frontage. So just to clarify, we have the frontage on Orchard Street, and then we have the frontage on Kirkfield Road. In a letter that was, in a cover letter that was sent on April 24th, 2023, from Mr. Doug Carroll, it does request a lot frontage of 7.62 meters on Orchard Street and 152.15 meters on Kirkfield Road, which when summed is 159.77 meters.
This is as clear as mud. Ms. Archer, go ahead.
It still seems to me if we approve even 160 or 159 point whatever, the sketch, and Mr. Carroll says, I believe, his client gave him the number of 132. If we approve 160 or 159, they're still not going to have enough.
Ms. Peck, I have to keep going back to you.
Planning staff. Sorry. Sorry, do you mind repeating the question?
I believe Mr. Carroll said that the 132.8 is his handwriting. His client told him there was 132.8. Now we're approving 160, which that would have been or it's just not the right figures. If we approve 160, according to them, there's only 132 plus the 7, which is 140.
Ms. Berry, do you want a few minutes? We'll just put a, yes, all right, let's take 5 until we get this straightened out. All right, Ms. Berry, I'm going to call it back. Do you wish to speak to it, or Ms. Peck, either one?
Okay, thank you for that intermission. So after speaking with the applicant on the file, staff are comfortable, notwithstanding the sketch in front of you, that the decision on the table would be a reduced lot frontage of 159. And that will be amended in the decision as well as in the sketch as well.
So, Mr. Carroll, we've had those discussions, so, and I understand where you are, but I think I've indicated it was either that or a deferral, so we're going to go with the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, staff.
All right. Where are we? All right. Are there any further questions from committee to either Mr. Carroll or to the manager or to the planner? All right, being none. Is there anyone online or here wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone online or here wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? All right.
Okay, so the relief sought would read, Section 13.18.1.1a of the bylaw requires pardon me. My bad. Just give me another minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you everybody, and thank you for your good nature. So it should read, oh my goodness, pardon me. This is, okay, here we go. It should read, oh, now we're computer problems. All right, we're on board. Yes, I will. So this is the relief sought. So section 7.2.1.2 of the bylaw requires a minimum frontage of 230 meters under the A1 zone. As a result of the severance, a lot addition, the retained parcel will have a total frontage of 159 meters. There is no change to the conditions.
All right, are there any questions of the committee prior to me asking for a motion then? All right, could I have a motion then, Mr. Strangway, as amended?
As amended, recommended by staff.
And do I have a seconder? Eddie Muscar? No further comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. And I do appreciate everyone's patience. Thank you for that. All righty. Moving right along then, we're dealing now with file number D20-2023-044, and this is 14 Greenwood Road, Geographic Township of Laxton. And again, Ms. Peck, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is located in an established waterfront community located along the east shore of Rush Lake, approximately 600 meters from the intersection of Rush Lake Road and Monk Road. The subject property abuts similarly sized residential lots to the north and south, with a large agricultural backlot located at the dwelling's rear on the east side of Greenwood Road. As expected, over time, owners may wish to improve their property to achieve its highest and best use. This application seeks to facilitate the construction of an additional residential unit, ARU, on the upper level of an existing garage on a lot with private services. The subject property is less than 4,000 square meters in size, and therefore an ARU is not permitted as of right. The photo above was taken at the front lot line looking towards the water. You can see the existing garage located in the front yard here behind the trees. The lot is heavily treed and relatively flat near the road and slopes down towards the lake. The proposed ARU will not require any exterior building additions, expansions, or reconstruction. The applicant is proposing an internal retrofit of the garage's existing upper level, which currently provides storage space to accommodate living space as well as a kitchen and bathroom facility. An ARU will provide additional living space to accommodate the owner's family and friends, specifically their daughter who visits during the summer months. An ARU also provides the potential for rental tenure and supplementary income opportunities if desired. This may assist the city in meeting its rental housing and affordable housing objectives. Therefore, the development is desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, and structure. Above is another photo of the existing garage, which already has a separate exterior entrance. The image on the right was taken, I'll move to the next slide here. The image on the right was taken at the, I don't know how I got there, okay. The image on the right was taken standing at the base of the garage stairs looking towards the lake. Looking towards the lake, you can see the primary dwelling in the distance, as well as the dwelling's raised mounded septic system located behind the garage. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan. The waterfront designation permits low-density residential and residential accessory uses, buildings, and structures. The city's official plan requires a minimum lot area of 4,000 square meters when an ARU is proposed outside of a designated settlement area. However, this requirement may be reduced when it is demonstrated through a septic review that the lot can be adequately serviced. The city's supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems was circulated on the application, and the applicant submitted a sewage system review with the Building and Septic Division. The owners are proposing a secondary septic system to service the ARU exclusively. The property has been evaluated through a site visit to determine allowances for an additional sewage system that will be used to service the ARU. The location of this proposed system is shown above, opposite of the dwelling's sewage system on the north side of the existing driveway. Based on the sewage system proposal and the site observations, it was determined that an alternate type treatment system can be accommodated on the property. Additionally, should the sewage system servicing of the dwelling unit fail, a replacement alternative system can be accommodated on the lot. As such, the Building and Septic Division has no issue with the proposed minor variance as it relates to on-site sewage disposal. Therefore, the variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The subject property is zoned limited service residential under the United Township of Laxon, Digby, and Longford zoning bylaw. The LSR zone permits a single detached dwelling and a detached accessory structure, as well as accessory uses, such as an ARU. Section 18.31 VI of the bylaw permits an ARU as of right on lots 4,000 square meters in size where private services are proposed. The subject property is 2,024 square meters in size. The intent of the minimum lot area requirement is to ensure that an adequate carrying capacity of land is maintained to accommodate the necessary sewage system upgrades and water demand. To facilitate the proposal, the owner is installing a second septic system, and the garage's upper level will provide an additional 12.8 square meters of living space, which is not anticipated to significantly increase the property's water demand. The proposed ARU will be located on the upper level of an existing building, and no exterior alteration is required. The existing garage complies with all of the yard requirements for a detached accessory structure, and the lot meets all other ARU eligibility requirements under the zoning bylaw. Therefore, the variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way with respect to access, drainage, streetscaping, and maintenance, and therefore the application is considered minor in nature. No other comments or concerns and comments of objection were received by members of the public or circulated agencies. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all four tests of a minor variance, and staff respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beck. Other questions of the planner? All right. Being none, is the applicant here or online? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? All right. Is there anyone online or here wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone online or here wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? All right, being none, committee, where are we? Councillor?
As printed.
All right, do I have a seconder? Mr. Erickson, any further comments or questions in relation to the motion on the floor? None? All those in favor? And that carries, thank you. All right. All right, and now we're dealing with file number D20-2023-045, and this is 121 Kennedon Drive, Geographic Township of Emily. Ms. Evans, we're giving Ms. Peck a break.
Yes, thank you. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned rural residential type 3 zone under the Township of Emily zoning bylaw. The subject property is located in an established residential neighborhood on the eastern shore of Pigeon Lake. The property is rectangular in shape, has frontage on the water, and contains a one-story single detached dwelling and a shed. The purpose of the application is to recognize the existing non-complying side yard setback of an addition to the dwelling, which was constructed in 2017. So in 2017, the previous owners of the property were issued a building permit to facilitate the construction of an addition. The plans that were submitted to the Building and Septic Division showed a side yard setback of 5.59 meters. In 2020, when the current owners purchased the property, it was discovered that there was an open building permit on the property for outstanding deficiencies, and repairs were required to address those deficiencies, which were completed by the current owners. At that same time, the current owners had a survey done for the purposes of building a fence, and through the completion of the survey, it was determined that the setback between the side lot line and the constructed addition is 2.85 meters. The required minimum interior side yard setback is 3 meters. Site plan compliance is a component of a building permit, and the Building and Septic Division cannot close the open permit on this property without the existing non-complying setback being addressed. The owners have taken steps to address this deficiency by submitting a minor variance application for evaluation for the purposes of closing the building permit to achieve clean title for the sale of the property. The addition was constructed in 2017 and has existed in its current location since that time, and the purpose of the variance is to recognize the existing non-complying setback of 2.85 meters. No further encroachment is proposed. Looking to the official plan, low-density residential uses and buildings and structures accessory to residential uses are permitted in the waterfront designation, with performance and siting criteria being implemented through the zoning bylaw. Here we have a photo of the front of the existing dwelling. So you can see, take a look and see what it looks like. The property lines on the subject property are at an angle. So the southwest corner of the dwelling is closer to the western lot line than the northwest corner. The photo on the left shows the northwest corner of the dwelling, and the photo on the right shows the southwest corner, which is the corner that requires the variance. The approximate setbacks from the property line are shown in red. As per section 12.2.1.3b of the bylaw, the minimum interior side yard setback is 3 meters. And again, the existing setback is 2.85 meters. The purpose of an interior side yard setback is to manage massing and privacy issues and to provide sufficient space for lot drainage, access between front and rear yards, and building maintenance. The existing setback of 2.85 meters provides adequate space for drainage and allows for unimpeded access between the front and rear yards, as well as room for carrying out any required building maintenance on this side of the dwelling. In this photo, the edge of the dwelling on the subject property is at the right side of the frame, and the dwelling on the neighboring property is on the left side of the frame. The existing dwelling does not directly abut the neighboring dwelling on the property next door, and therefore no impacts to privacy are anticipated here. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies. Comments were received from the neighboring property owner at 119 Kennedy Drive, and a copy of these comments has been provided to committee members prior to today. Concerns were raised regarding the drainage of water from the subject property onto the neighboring property, as well as concerns regarding the setback between the driveway and the shared property line. In response to these comments, I can provide that water drainage between neighboring properties is a civil matter. Also, the Emily zoning bylaw does not have a required setback between a driveway and a shared property line. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Questions of the planner? All right, being none. Is the applicant present or online? Yes, sir. Do you wish to speak to it, sir? Come to the podium if you would. Then I'll let you hit that speaker button. Good stuff. And what is your name, sir?
My name is John Sibenik.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Read the staff report and listened to it. I had a look at the west facade, and there's one window on this side, but it's well beyond the 3-meter setback requirement, so I think the privacy is maintained. As far as the 2.85 meter, this appears to be a construction error because the previous owner didn't engage a proper land surveyor to locate the property line. The form of the building, you know, you can tell that it's an L-shaped addition. It's basically providing the open concept to the house with the open kitchen, living and dining area. And the one window that's on the west side is from the dining room. And that's, as I say, well beyond the 3-meter setback requirement. So I think privacy is achieved. The actual encroachment of that 2.85 is probably for a distance of about 0.5 meter from the front wall of the house. So beyond that, we have the 3-meter requirement. So I think the privacy, the scale of the building, all appear to be within keeping with the character of this community. And I feel that all the inspections have been passed, including the grading, whatever, all outstanding matters I think have been resolved through inspections and additional work on site, to my knowledge. So, no, I can comment further if you have any further questions.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant? Yes, Mr.
Chair, to the applicant, could I just say the effect is minimal, but with the permission of your neighbor, could you rake those stones back onto your property? The few that have gone to number 119?
Yeah, does this in any way impact the variance? No. Well, we'll let you neighbors figure that out. How's that? All right. Anything further of the with respect to the applicant? All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you taking the time. All right. Is there anyone online or here wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone online or here wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Okay, I'm advised no. Committee, where are we? Mr. Strongway?
As recommended by staff.
All right, and seconded by Ms. Archer. All right, any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Your application is approved, sir. All righty. We're now dealing with file number D20-2023-046, and this is 34 Royal Estate Drive, Geographic Township of Members. And again, Ms. Evans, go ahead.
Thank you. The subject property is designated rural settlement under the City of Kawartha Lakes Oak Ridges Marine Policy Area and is zoned rural residential type 1 exception 5 under the Oak Ridge Marine zoning bylaw. The RR1 exception 5 zone contains lot area and frontage requirements as well as minimum front and side yard setbacks that are different from what is required in the RR1 zone. The subject property is located in an established residential neighborhood located at the southern end of the rural settlement of Pontypool. The property is a corner lot and contains a single detached dwelling with attached garage constructed in 1991. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of an addition to the existing attached garage. Section 13.2D of the bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback of 6 meters. The proposed setback is 3.43 meters. Section 13.2E of the bylaw requires a minimum flankage yard setback of 15 meters. The proposed setback is 10.06 meters. The proposal is to construct an addition to increase the size of the existing attached garage. The addition can be seen here, outlined in red. The addition will add an extra 89.2 square meters of area to the attached garage, which is required to adequately store the owner's vehicles. Looking to the official plan, a single detached dwelling and accessory buildings and structures are permitted within the rural settlement designation, with performance and siting criteria being implemented through the zoning bylaw. The photo on the left shows the existing dwelling and attached garage, and the photo on the right was taken from the same location on the property, just shifted slightly to the east to show the attached garage as well as the location of the proposed addition. The photo on the left was taken with me standing at the eastern property line, being the flankage lot line, and the photo on the right was taken from the driveway, showing the flankage yard. The purpose of the required setback from a flankage lot line is to provide adequate spatial separation between a road allowance and an abutting residential use to avoid land use conflicts between transportation and residential uses, as well as to prevent impacts to sightlines. The proposed 10.06 meter flankage yard setback will allow for adequate room for snow storage and road maintenance and will ensure sightlines are not impeded. Additionally, as the addition is for garage space, the proposal will not result in land use conflicts between transportation and residential uses. The bylaw requires an extensive flankage yard setback, and for comparative purposes, other zoning bylaws typically require a minimum flankage yard setback of 7.5 meters. The photo on the left shows the rear yard of the property behind the existing attached garage, and the photo on the right is looking through the trees at the rear of the lot towards the neighboring property. The intent of the rear yard setback is to reduce land use and privacy conflicts between abutting properties, address massing impacts, and provide sufficient rear yard amenity space. The rear yard of the property abuts the interior side yard of the property to the north, and the dwelling on the neighboring property is approximately 16 meters from the shared lot line. Also, there are no windows proposed on the rear wall of the garage addition. The enlargement of the garage on the subject property towards this shared lot line is not anticipated to result in any privacy or massing impacts. The existing dwelling and attached garage are situated towards the rear of the lot, limiting the space in the rear yard to be used for amenities. And therefore, the majority of the subject property's amenity space is located within the front and side yards. The addition of the garage extending into the rear yard will not impact the owner's ability to use the rest of the property for outdoor recreational purposes. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way. Comments were received from Otonabee Region Conservation Authority stating that they have no concerns and a permit will not be required from their office. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
And again, thank you, Ms. Evans. Questions of the planner? All right, being none, is the applicant here or on? Yes, sir. Do you wish to speak to it? All right. Very good. Do we have anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application? Support of the application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Committee, in your hands. Councillor.
As recommended.
And seconded by Ms. Richardson. All right. Any further comments or questions in relation to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right, Ms. Peck, we're going to put you back to work. We're dealing with file number D20-2023-047. This is 72 St. Patrick Street, geographic town of Lindsay. Go ahead, Ms. Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is located in an established residential community in Lindsay, east of the Scugog River. The subject property is surrounded by residential uses to the north, south, and west. East of the subject property are employment lands and industrial uses such as Cameron Steel. The purpose of the application is to facilitate an addition to an existing detached garage for a greater height than permitted under the bylaw. The image above was taken from St. Patrick Street, looking towards the lot. On the left, you can see the primary dwelling. In this slide, you can see the dwelling again on the left. This time, the view of the south facade as viewed from the top of the driveway. South of the dwelling is a brick path that leads towards the lot's rear, where the existing garage is located. In the image on the right, you can see the garage in the distance, circled in red. The site plan above illustrates the proposed garage location, or proposed addition location, indicated in light gray, oriented towards the garage's rear. The increase in the garage height will accommodate the owner's travel trailer, protecting it from exterior elements and tidying up the property's rear view. The design of the garage responds to its intended use by restricting the height encroachment to only the portion of the building where the trailer will be stored. This location abuts an existing driveway and will aid in vehicle parking. The proposed building addition is located at the property's rear, away from adjacent residential buildings, reducing its potential for negative impacts on adjacent structures due to shadowing or water runoff. Based on this review, the variance is considered desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure. The subject property is designated residential in the Town of Lindsay official plan. This designation permits low-density residential and residential accessory uses, buildings, and structures. Performance and siting criteria are implemented through the zoning bylaw. Therefore, the variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The subject property is zoned residential type 2 under the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw. The R2 zone permits residential uses and accessory uses in buildings. Section 5.2C of the bylaw permits a maximum accessory building height of 5 meters. A height of 6.1 meters is proposed. The image above illustrates an approximate height and location of the proposed addition. The image on the bottom right is an example image which I sourced online and should not be confused as a rendering of the proposal. A bylaw's general provisions may limit the height of an accessory building or structure to protect the privacy, view, and daylighting of neighboring lots, and to ensure the building and its use remain subordinate in size compared to the principal dwelling. The subject property's primary dwelling will remain taller than the proposed garage addition. Furthermore, the garage is located more than 50 meters away from the primary dwelling unit and the primary residential buildings on neighboring lots. Therefore, the garage's perceived height from the street will be minimized and negative impacts related to privacy and daylighting on adjacent buildings are not anticipated. The garage addition also has a greater interior side yard setback than required, which reduces the likelihood of water runoff onto the adjacent property to the north. Therefore, the proposal maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way with respect to access, drainage, streetscaping, and maintenance. Therefore, the application is considered minor in nature. No other comments were received or objections were received from members of the public or circulated agencies. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance, and staff respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peck. Questions to the planner? Being none, is the applicant here? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? Present or online? All right. Is there anyone here or online wishing to speak excuse me, in support of this application? In support of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application. Committee, we're smoking right along. Ms. Archer. That is printed. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Yeo. All right. Any further comments or questions on the motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. All right, we're now dealing with file number D20-2023-048, and this is 185 Meadowview Road, Geographic Township of Emily. And Ms. Peck, we're going to make you work again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is a large agricultural lot located, approximately 42 hectares in size, and is located 2 kilometers south of the village of Omimi. A small creek bisects the property in the north-south direction. It's hard to see on this sketch, but you can, or on this map, but you can see that the creek kind of goes in this direction here. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of a detached accessory structure, being a detached garage, located closer to an environmental protection zone boundary than permitted under the bylaw. The subject property currently contains a single detached dwelling, circa 1875, a barn, circa 1930, a second barn, circa 1920, as well as a detached garage, which is currently used for semi-dry storage. A new garage is proposed and will provide watertight storage for the owner's vehicles, yard equipment, and personal effects. In the image above, you can see the existing dwelling and detached garage, as well as the larger of the 2 barns. In support of this proposal, the owner will demolish the existing garage upon completion of the proposed accessory structure. The existing garage is in poor condition, however, will provide a convenient place to store personal effects and construction material until the new garage construction is complete. In this next image, you can see both of the existing barns located behind the detached garage, which is proposed for removal. The image above illustrates the proposed location for the new garage, which is located east of the barns shown on the last slide. The selected location is considered desirable as it remains largely cleared of trees due to damage sustained in the May 2022 derecho storm. The garage is logically located at the perimeter of the cleared land in proximity to the farmhouse and will allow for greater amenity space at the dwelling's rear between the dwelling and the existing barns. I've also illustrated the approximate EP zone boundary, which is along that clearing, between the clearing and the wooded area. Therefore, the proposal is considered desirable and appropriate for the development of the land, building, or structure. The subject property is designated rural and environmental protection under the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan. The proposed accessory building is located entirely within the rural designation, which permits a single detached dwelling and residential accessory uses, buildings, and structures. Therefore, the proposal maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The subject property is zoned agricultural and environmental protection zone under the Township of Emily zoning bylaw. Section 3.18.1.1a of the bylaw's general provisions requires a 15-meter setback between any building or structure and any class of environmental zone category. A setback of 1 meter is proposed. A bylaw may require a setback from an environmental protection category, a zone category, to provide a buffer of protection to and from a natural heritage or hazard feature. The environmental protection zone boundary provides a buffer of approximately 35 meters to the edge of the nearby watercourse, which is identified as a provincially significant and unevaluated wetland under the Ministry's Natural Heritage System mapping. A special setback requirement from an environmental protection zone category is only required in 7 of the city's 19 different zoning bylaws. Other bylaws forgo this setback requirement since, based on its method of delineation, the EP zone boundary may be considered an adequate setback distance in and of itself. Based on the Ministry's Natural Heritage feature mapping, the proposed garage appears to be located outside of the wetland feature, and Kawartha Region Conservation Authority has reviewed and issued a permit for this proposal. Therefore, the variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way with respect to access, drainage, streetscaping, and maintenance, and therefore the application is considered minor in nature. The supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems was circulated on the application. An accessory structure will be located greater than 100 feet to the existing dwelling. This will ensure the required clearance distances between the proposed structure and the current sewage system. As well, the accessory structure will not contain any plumbing fixtures or habitable space. As such, the Building and Septic Division have no issue with the minor variance application as it relates to private on-site sewage disposal. The Building Division was also circulated on the application. The city's plans examiner noted that a demolition permit is required for the existing garage. No other comments or concerns or objections were received by members of the public or circulated agencies. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance, and staff respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the planner? It's one of those days. Everyone's agreeable. Is the owner or the applicant here? The applicant or online wishing to speak to the application? Oh, I'm told yes.
Good afternoon. I am here. My name is Jamie Crone.
All right. Go ahead, sir.
I believe that it's all been said here. I'm hopeful to get started with this here shortly.
Did we get your name?
Jamie Crone.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant?
No, there's not.
Well, I guess you're not allowed. All right. Thank you for taking the time, sir. We'll continue here. All right. Is there anyone online or here wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone here or online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Committee. Ms. Scar.
As printed.
As printed. Do I have a seconder? Ms. Richardson? All right. Any further comments or questions in relation to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. Your application is approved, sir. File number D20-2023-049, and this is 72 Mason Lane, Geographic Township of Somerville. Ms. Evans, go ahead.
Thank you. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned limited service residential under the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw. The subject property is located in an established residential neighborhood located on the eastern shore of Balsam Lake. The property is rectangular in shape, has frontage on the water, and contains a single detached dwelling which was constructed in 2021, a boathouse, and 2 sheds. The sheds are to be removed. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of a detached garage in the front yard. Section 18.1.2b of the bylaw states that an accessory structure may not be erected closer to a street than the required front yard setback for the zone in which it is located. The minimum front yard setback in the limited service residential zone is 7.5 meters, and the proposed setback is 1.2 meters. These elevations provide an idea of what the garage is to look like. The two sheds that are currently located in the front yard will be demolished, and the new garage will be constructed in their current location. The new garage is to be approximately 36.2 square meters in size and will provide opportunities for storage on the property. Looking to the official plan, low-density residential uses and buildings and structures accessory to residential uses are permitted in the waterfront designation, with performance and siting criteria being implemented through the zoning bylaw. This photo was taken with me standing on the traveled portion of the road allowance looking into the subject property. The proposed garage is to be located where the existing sheds are on the right-hand side of the photo there. Relief is required from the minimum front yard setback, and the intent of the minimum front yard setback is to ensure adequate spatial separation between built form and the traveled portion of the road, and to maintain features such as sightlines and the character of the streetscape. In this photo, the yellow line represents the edge of the traveled portion of the road, and the red line represents the approximate location of the property's front lot line. The blue rectangle represents the approximate edge of the proposed garage, set back 1.2 meters from the front lot line. There is a wide area of road allowance between the front lot line of the subject property and the traveled portion of the road, being approximately 9.14 meters. Therefore, though the garage is to be 1.2 meters from the front lot line, it will be approximately 10.34 meters from the traveled portion of the road, which is a private road. The distance between the traveled portion of the road allowance and the proposed garage is sufficient to ensure the traveled portion of the road and sight lines are not impacted by the proposed garage, and vehicles will be able to safely exit the south-facing garage door. Additionally, the garage is to be set back further from the front lot line than what the existing shed is today. As there are existing accessory structures on other properties in the area with deficient front yard setbacks, the proposed garage is in keeping with the character of the area. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the right-of-way. After the writing of the report, comments were received from Kawartha Region Conservation Authority stating that they have no concerns with the proposal. The property is entirely regulated by KRCA, and as such, a permit will be required. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the committee or the planner? Ms. Archer.
Through you, please, to the planner. I'm a little directionally challenged. Could you tell me, please, how are they going to access the garage? The garage door is facing toward the road or toward the property line?
Through the chair, I'll use the pointer opposite me here on the screen. Garage door to be here with the road here.
Require the removal of any of those lovely trees?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of any trees being removed, but I'll let the applicant speak to that.
Anything further from committee? All right. I'm assuming, ma'am, you're the applicant, and your name is?
Hello, Vanessa Archer from TD Consulting. Through you, Mr. Chair, to answer that question, there should not be a significant impact to any of the trees in the area.
Did you wish to speak further to the application?
Sorry. Further to the application, no, I would like to thank the planner for her report, and if there's any other additional questions, I'm here.
And thank you for that. Are there any further questions of the applicant? All right, being none, thank you for taking the time. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Committee. Mr. Strangway?
As recommended by staff.
And do I have a seconder? Mr. Erickson? All right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. The application is approved. Moving right along. File number D20-2023-050, and this is 596 Bulmers Road, Geographic Township of Verlem. Ms. Evans.
Thank you. The subject property is designated rural and environmental protection under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned general rural under the Township of Verlem zoning bylaw. There we go. The subject property is located on the eastern side of Bulmers Road, a municipally assumed and maintained road. The property contains a single detached dwelling, which was constructed approximately in 1900, as well as several accessory buildings, including barns, a shed, a detached garage, chicken coops, and a former blacksmith shop. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the conversion of an existing accessory structure, being the former blacksmith shop, into an additional residential unit or ARU. Section 19.2C of the bylaw requires a minimum front yard setback of 10 meters plus an additional 10 meters from the center line of the road allowance, required by Section 5.18.3. The existing setback is 5.9 meters from the front lot line and 15.9 meters from the center line of the road allowance. Section 5.1.5 of the bylaw permits a maximum height for accessory structures of 5 meters, and the existing height is 5.6 meters. The building is to remain in its current location, and the ARU is to be occupied by a member of the owner's family. The property is designated rural and environmental protection under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, and the environmental protection designation follows a water course on the property. The existing accessory structure that is to be converted to an ARU is outside of the environmental protection designation and is fully within the rural designation. Low-density residential uses, along with accessory uses, are anticipated within this designation, with performance and siting criteria being implemented through the zoning bylaw. Additionally, under the official plan, an ARU is permitted as of right, in addition to the primary residential unit in single-detached, semi-detached, or townhouse dwellings, as well as in accessory buildings or structures on lots associated with these dwelling types, provided they are in accordance with this policy and the applicable zoning bylaw provisions. As per section 19.2C of the bylaw, the minimum front yard setback for uses other than farm buildings is 10 meters. In addition to this setback requirement, the general provisions section of the bylaw contains provisions establishing minimum setbacks from the center of a road allowance, which varies depending on the classification of the road. So the higher the classification or the higher order the road, the greater the setback. As Bulmers Road is not a provincial highway or a county road, for the purposes of the centerline setback provision, it is classified as other street. The required setback from the center line of the road allowance is 10 meters plus the minimum front yard setback, which is also 10 meters. The existing building is 15.9 meters from the center of the road allowance and 5.9 meters from the front lot line. The road allowance for Bulmers Road is currently approximately 20 meters wide, and it is unlikely the municipality would pursue road widenings in this vicinity. The intent of the minimum front yard setback is to ensure adequate spatial separation between built form and the traveled portion of the street, and to maintain features such as sightlines and the character of the streetscape. The existing setback from the front lot line is sufficient to ensure sightlines and the traveled portion of the road are not impacted. Additionally, this accessory building was constructed in the early 1900s and has therefore existed in this location for a substantial amount of time. It is not anticipated that the conversion of the existing structure to an ARU will adversely impact the character of the property or the surrounding area. As per section 5.1.5 of the bylaw, the maximum height for an accessory structure is 5 meters. The height of the existing accessory structure, which is also proposed for the ARU, is 5.6 meters, and the height of the building will not be increased as a result of it being converted to the ARU. The purpose of a maximum height for non-agricultural accessory structures in an agricultural zone is to ensure accessory use is subordinate to the primary residential use, being the primary dwelling. The property contains several large outbuildings scattered across the property, and the increased height of the existing accessory structure is not out of character with the other buildings on the property or in the area. The 0.6 meters over the permitted maximum height is really not perceptible when viewing the structure from the street. Additionally, the proposed ARU is to be smaller than the primary dwelling, ensuring the ARU is subordinate to the primary dwelling. For comparative purposes, if the ARU was to be constructed above a garage, the bylaw would permit a maximum height of 10 meters. There are no anticipated impacts on environmental features, neighboring properties, or the function of the municipal right-of-way. After the writing of the report, comments were received from the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems. A site visit was conducted to review the location of the existing structure for servicing with a private on-site sewage disposal system. Based on the observations from the site visit, a Class 4 sewage disposal system can be accommodated within the vicinity of the accessory structure while maintaining the Ontario Building Code requirements for clearance distances to all mandated items. A sewage system permit to install will be required for the installation of a sewage system to service the ARU. As such, the Building and Septic Division has no issue with the proposed minor variance as it relates to private on-site sewage disposal. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, any questions of, yes, Ms. Richardson, go ahead.
Through you, should there be a condition added that the applicant is required to get a permit through the septic division?
Sevens?
Through the chair, it would be a requirement as part of any building permits that they would need to do the renovations to the interior, as well as for the registration of this building as an ARU, as it will have to be registered through the Building and Septic Division.
That's fine. I just recall we've added that in the past, hence my query.
Through the chair, in the past we may have added it as a condition if the septic division hadn't been able to do a site visit prior to the Committee of Adjustment meeting, but in this case they were able to do the site visit and provide comments based on that site visit.
Anything further from committee? Mr. Erickson, go ahead.
The chair to the planner, could you just tell me what the writing or printing is on the applicant's sketch on the right side?
Through the chair, I left my glasses at home, so I'd better pull it up on my computer. Sorry, if I could just have a moment to read that font there.
Good luck.
Through the chair, that says 275 meters from the edge of the property. So that is the setback from the blacksmith shop, which is the proposed ARU conversion. And that is the distance from the side lot line. So in the sketch, just because of how big the property is, they've really zoomed in on where the buildings are. So that interior side lot line is 275 meters away from the blacksmith shop.
Thank you. Any follow-up? No? All right, good. Anything further from committee? All right, is the applicant here or online? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? All right. Is there anyone online or here wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone present or online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Well, we've heard it all, committee. Where are we? Who wants to do it? Ms. Archer, I see your hand there. Yeah, all right. And Councillor Yeo, all right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right. We are now dealing with D20-2023-051, and this is 6 Ideal Point, Geographic Township of Verlem. Ms. Peck, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is an existing residential waterfront lot abutting the south shore of Upper Sturgeon Lake. The property is located along Ideal Point, a dead-end, unimproved, and unmaintained road that connects with the City of Kawartha Lakes Road 24 to the south. The property consists of 2 parcels, a waterfront portion and a backlot portion located south of Ideal Point, as indicated on the property deed. The waterfront portion currently contains a single detached dwelling, circa 1955, and a small wood garden shed, circa 1950s. As such, the existing buildings and structures are considered legal non-complying as they predate the passing of the Verlem zoning bylaw on March 2nd, 1987. Although not subject to this application, the backlot parcel contains a detached garage. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the reconstruction of a single detached dwelling and deck, recognizing the existing non-compliances. The proposed renovations will provide an additional, or reconstruction I should say, will provide an additional 19.25 square meters of living space to better accommodate family and guests. The proposed dwelling will generally occupy the same building footprint that exists today. The proposed building enlargements will take place in logical locations along the north building facade and generally align with the existing building's main wall setbacks. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped way ahead. The dwelling will remain 1 story in height, meaning its massing will largely remain the same, and its appearance from the street will also be similar, with the exception of a small covered porch added to the south facade and some changes to the building's fenestration. A small deck already exists where the covered porch is proposed, meaning its addition is likely not to change the function of the front yard or the private right-of-way. Therefore, the variance is considered desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan. The waterfront designation permits low-density residential and residential accessory uses, buildings, and structures. Performance and siting criteria are implemented through the zoning bylaw. The proposal aims to improve the existing water setback conditions and upholds the maximum lot coverage requirements under the bylaw. Additionally, the existing shoreline treatment will remain the same. Therefore, the application upholds the objectives of the waterfront designation and its intent to improve development conditions of shoreline lots and to protect surface water quality through setbacks, minimum lot sizes, and shoreline naturalization efforts. Therefore, the variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The property is zoned limited service residential under the Township of Verlem zoning bylaw. This zone category permits a single detached dwelling and residential accessory uses, buildings, and structures. As per section 10.2D of the bylaw, a minimum lot frontage depth of 7.5 meters is required. The applicant is proposing a front yard setback of 4.3 meters to the porch, which is 0.6 meters less than the dwelling's existing front yard setback at 4.9 meters. A bylaw may establish a minimum front yard depth to create a visually consistent streetscape and to provide amenity space and parking areas outside of the traveled portion of the street to ensure safe function of the private right-of-way. The existing and proposed dwellings are oriented on an angle, meaning that the dwelling's front main wall does not run parallel to the front lot line. In this case, the front yard setback ranges from 4.3 meters at the dwelling's porch to a greater than permitted setback at the dwelling's west corner. The location of the existing dwelling and porch have allowed for unimpeded and safe vehicle access to the property for 68 years, and the setback between the front lot line and the dwelling's north corner remains adequately sized to still accommodate parking in the front yard if desired. In the image above, you can see the existing parking space located in the front yard. Going back a few slides here, the image on the left illustrates the proposed changes to the building's south elevation, with the covered porch outlined in yellow. Section 10.2G of the bylaw requires a minimum rear yard depth of 7.5 meters, a rear yard depth of 1.6 meters to the deck, and 4.4 meters to the dwelling are proposed. The proposed setbacks are the same or improved upon the existing conditions of the dwelling and deck, which currently have a rear yard depth of 0.5 meters to the deck and 4.4 meters to the dwelling. The location of the proposed building is shown by the yellow dashed lines in the image on the right, with the rear yard setback, where the rear yard setback will remain at 4.4 meters. Similarly, section 10.2H of the bylaw requires a minimum water setback of 15 meters. The applicant is proposing a water setback of 1.6 meters to the deck and 4.4 meters to the dwelling, where setbacks of 0.5 meters and 4.4 meters currently exist respectively. The location of the proposed deck addition on the building's east facade is shown by the dashed blue line on the image above. The water setback will be improved to 1.6 meters to the deck. The image on the left illustrates the proposed deck and dwelling additions on the north facade, showed by the blue and yellow dashed lines respectively. On the right. The purpose of the minimum rear yard and water setbacks on a waterfront lot is to provide amenity space and to protect the dwelling from natural hazards such as flooding. In this case, the property's side yards provide setbacks greater than required under the bylaw, providing enhanced amenity space. Additionally, the existing and proposed deck space will provide amenity space in the rear yard. Kawartha Region Conservation Authority was circulated on the application to review potential natural hazards. As a result of this review, Kawartha Region Conservation Authority has no concern with the approval of the minor variance if desired. However, the applicant will require a permit for their proposed work. Therefore, the variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems was circulated on the application. A site visit was completed to review the existing sewage system on the property and to conduct an evaluation for the replacement of a Class 5 holding tank in the front yard. During the site visit, a drilled well was observed on the property within 15 meters from the existing Class 5 holding tank. Other areas of the property were evaluated for the replacement of the Class 5 holding tank to ensure the required clearance to the drilled well could be established. Due to the size of the property and the location of the dwelling, there are limited options to replace the holding tank and to ensure the minimum clearance distance is maintained. The location of the holding tank will need to be further evaluated through an application for a sewage system permit. As such, planning staff are proposing a third condition be applied that would state the applicant must satisfy the super of Part 8 sewage systems for the private on-site sewage disposal requirements as they relate to the proposed redevelopment. No other comments, concerns, or objections were received by members of the public or circulated agencies. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance, and staff respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beck. Other questions of the planner? Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Not that it matters in my decision or the condition, but what was there first, the septic tank or the well?
Through the chair, I don't know which one was there first. They exist to date, and so I couldn't answer that. Maybe the applicant might know.
Oh, it's just unfortunate because I know on an odd occasion, somebody's going to drill a well and they drill it too close to somebody's existing septic, and it's typically the septic person that has to pay the price. And so it's just my own curiosity. Thank you.
Anything further of the planner? All right. Ms. Archer, do you wish to speak to it? Perhaps you could respond to Councillor Yo's question there if you can, with respect to the well and the septic.
Sure. Vanessa Archer from TD Consulting, applicant on the file. I don't have anything additional to add in response to Councillor's comment there or question. The owner is here as well, and we just conferred. We don't know which one was installed first. It was prior to. However, we can attempt to try to pull a well record if there is any on the property. That's the only thing we can look at.
Councillor Yo?
No, it won't make a difference, and it's got to be moved, so it's got to be moved. So the condition's there.
Thank you. All right. Go ahead. Did you wish to speak to it further?
Nothing further to add. I'm here if there's any additional questions or comments, and we will address the septic as required through the septic department and permit.
Thank you for that. Are there any further questions of the applicant? All right. Being none, thank you. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in or here wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of the application? Anyone online or present wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee. Ms. Richardson, now this will be as amended. All right. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Yo? Any further comments or questions with respect to the amended motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right. All right, we're now dealing with deferred application, file number D20-2022-057, and this is 1023 Little Britain Road, Geographic Township of Mariposa. Quite a history here. Go ahead, Ms. Berry.
Thank you. Yes, it is, and I will not elaborate too greatly. The memo has been provided for you and submitted today for your consideration, just based on recent comments that we received over the last week. This is a matter that started with its initial public hearing last August. Now, it didn't proceed through the conventional public hearing scenario. We presented to the committee at that time that our recommendation was the file actually be deferred. The recommendation wasn't that the application be deferred, it was that the public hearing be deferred so that there could be an opportunity for the Conservation Authority and the owner to work through the violation and enforcement matter. So the history of the motions of this committee are included in the background. To go over sort of at its most basic sense here, the purpose of this application for 1023 Little Britain Road is essentially to recognize and to permit a detached accessory building to remain in its current location. The relief that was sought through the variance covers reduced setbacks, increased coverage, and increased height. In the passage of time and following committee's direction, the owner continued working with Kawartha Conservation, did make application. However, again, as itemized there in the memo, further work was needed. The committee granted a further deferral for an additional 6 months. That was where Conservation Authority and the applicant landed last December. That time period has lapsed. Here we are again, June 22nd, with a further suggestion that committee indulge both the request of the owner and Kawartha Conservation. We are seeing some progress. The owner has retained both a surveyor as well as a civil water resources and environmental engineering firm to prepare the necessary documentations to take back to Kawartha Conservation for further review. So we are seeing progress on this file, and our recommendation is not to be premature with proceeding with the variance hearing, and instead allow the enforcement violation matter to be addressed and then return to the committee in about 4 months' time, no later than October 26th or sooner, certainly if the matter is addressed, and then proceed with the public hearing for the variance at that time. Mr. Chair, I'll leave it there and receive any questions.
No, thank you, Ms. Berry. Are there questions of the manager? All right. Committee, a motion to defer as it's written there, I guess. Planning staff recommend the deferral be extended, returning at the latest to the October 26, 2023 meeting. So Mr. Strangway moved it. Do I have a seconder? Ms. Richardson? All right, the only thing with these is time, and obviously that is indicated there. So all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Right. No other business, no correspondence. All right. Next meeting is Thursday, July 27th at 1 p.m. in council chambers. Motion to adjourn. Ms. Richardson, Ms. Skyer. All those in favor? Aye, everybody likes that one. Yeah, I just want to say before we go, and again, Leah, to you and Ms. Peck, that we appreciate you taking the time to work on that matter. I think I have absolutely no problem, and if a committee member did, I'm sure they would make noise about it, but we're here to make informed decisions, and we can't make them without proper discussion and the hearing from you folks. So I appreciate the fact that you take the time to do it right, and we appreciate the fact that you do that. So we're very much appreciated, because some of these things, that one today was going nowhere fast, it seems. So we got through it. So thank you very much.